Greetings. I am Josh Rosenthal. I'm here with Ed Farraye, and this is A-Round, so the community of decision makers from software startups striving to raise their A-Round, their Series A, or have already raised it. And in addition, as a fan of bootstrapping myself, I want to include the people that are also from organizations that are sufficiently bootstrapped, right? You're actually going and doing business. So to begin with, and these things I want to stick to the schedule strictly. That is just a quick introduction, just 5 minutes, a little bit of discussion while we wait for everyone to come in. We're going to kick it on over to Ed. He's going to have 15-minute presentation, 10-minute Q&A, and then that's it. So 30 minutes, really tight. And so while we are taking this time, what I want to do within the first couple minutes, I know I've completely eaten away at those minutes, is just go and get some actionable intelligence from everybody that's in the presentation. So I think we're just going to limit it actually just to Sebastian, and then Ed, I'll kick it on over to you while I make a quick introduction to you before then. And also, I want to make an important announcement. Next week, Founder Institute and A-Round are going to begin a collaboration where we bring our members together. Founder Institute having a great deal of startup businesses internationally, and
one more.
And yep, and at the same time, we're able to go and provide that content and that expertise to the people that again are in their Series A or striving towards it. So let's begin. If I were to go and do this quick introduction, we try to keep it really short. Name, role, company, and what you're looking for. From my point of view, dealing with A-Round, I would say Josh Rosenthal, community manager at A-Round, and we're looking for leaders at startups to join A-Round. Those could be a founder, it could be a C-level, it could be a VP of engineering, it could be head of customer success support, whatever it might be. But that's who we're looking to have inside of our organization. At the same time, people on the LinkedIn Live, anyone can join and watch the content. So let me go and pass it off next to Mr. Sebastian. If you could give your introduction.
All right, super quick. I'm Sebastian Holst. Thrilled to be here again. I am a bootstrapper, and I am fascinated by this phase in the arc of a company's life cycle. So I'm happy to learn everything I can in these interesting times. And if I have a little pearl of wisdom to share every now and then, I'm happy to do that as well.
Excellent. All right, next, Mr. Daniel, you had joined us.
Hey, Josh.
There
Good
we
to
go.
see you again.
As well.
My name is Daniel Cohen-Dumari. I'm the founder and CEO of Xperio Labs. We're bringing to market the first agentic AI solution for the consulting and professional services industry. And I'm here to network and learn along the way.
Excellent. All right, Ed, I have completely eaten into your time. Here I am talking about maintaining schedule. First person to not maintain it. So I do want to do this. I want to go and give Ed, I want to give you 2 bites of the apple. One, introduce you, longtime friend. Also, you're an absolute marketing expert, especially when it comes to technology companies and bringing them 0 to 1 and beyond. So I know you're here to go and talk about scaling alternative growth channels, and that's especially important in this time when all of these channels are getting so much noise via AI slop, if I may be so rude. So let me go and have you introduce yourself and then introduce the presentation. I'll then stop it and you got it from there.
Awesome. So like Josh said, I'm Ed Farraye, and I'm a kind of a growth marketing advisor. So I work with different companies at different stages to really drive growth. So the way that I think about it is I try to bring a revenue lens to anything that we're doing on the marketing side. That's kind of been the focus of my role to date. And what I'm looking for is I think just connect with other people in the space. So And of course, like any other startups that might need some additional support on the growth side, I'm always happy to help, but just trying to share some of the nuggets that I've learned from having done growth at a couple of different places and just like some takeaways that I've gotten from there.
Fantastic. All right, second bite of the apple, and then it's yours. So let me just kind of stop the presentation and away you go.
Yeah, sounds great. Let me share my screen. And then let me try to switch to presenter mode.
There you go.
Okay, there we go.
Looking good.
Sweet. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of context. I think that I tried to kind of name this presentation this way because I think that for a lot of folks, like the general wisdom is to really focus on things that can scale, and I think that actually is really hard to do, especially at earlier stages of startups. And the reality is that a lot of things that seem like they won't scale might actually just be very nascent channels that you might be one of the first few to test out. So I think that that's kind of the general wisdom that I'm trying to impart today, and I'm going to go into the details as we go along. But you already heard about me, so I'm gonna skip this slide. And then I first want to start with just setting the stage of how we approach experimentation and how we got to some of these channels that I'm going to talk about throughout. So the way that we thought about it at Warp was that the first thing that we wanted to learn every time that we're testing a new channel is, can this actually deliver like high quality users, high quality active users, or insert like the right goal that your company is looking for here, whether that is like form fills on the website or people that are engaging with your content, right? Like you can use this framework for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And then once we answer this question, and if the answer is yes, we can actually drive people through this channel, whether that is of whatever cost that comes next, that is question number 2. So can we improve conversion rates or cost to make this actually something that is more efficient and could actually better align with the goals that we have as a business? And then what are some other things that we can do to improve our process over time is what comes next. So like, especially with like net new channels, the thing that I typically see is that they eat up more time and resources than usual because there's still a lot of things to figure out. So are there some things that you can do and get some efficiency in the process front as well? And then what are the limits that we can hit with this channel? That would be like the kind of like the last part of this framework. So what is the ultimate like growth that we can find with this potential channel, and does it have room to continue to like drive more volume over time? So with this framework in mind, there's like 2 examples that I want to run through here that I think when I first put this presentation together, I think it was towards the like maybe like end of last year, this was actually something that was still fairly new. Like I think that Warp and maybe a couple of other companies were doing GitHub sponsorships at the time, but it was really like rare. It wasn't something that was as common. If you go through GitHub repos today for open source projects, you'll see that a lot of them actually have sponsors, if not multiple sponsors at the stage. But when we first kicked this off, like we were really one of the first few people to sponsor on some of these repos. So there was a bit of like education that was involved here as well, right? So we would reach out to folks that had never had sponsorship before, and we kind of had to build the model with the repo maintainers as well. And one additional piece of context that I forgot to mention at the beginning here is that for the example that I'm sharing here, Warp is a agentic development environment, and they're primarily going after developers. So we were the reason why we went to GitHub as like one of the channels that we wanted to test was because we're looking for developers, and we're looking for developers wherever they are. So this could apply for other platforms that might be more relevant for your users, but in this example in particular, we were going looking for more developers. So the way that we structured this was that we wanted to first run some trials. So we did like 2 to 3 month trials with a few repos that were of different sizes, different types of tools, because we wanted to really understand like where are the places that we're going to find the most the most engagement with to start. And we had some hypotheses around that. So once we actually got those initial first set of data, we were able to go back and see like, okay, which are the repos that seem to have the most alignment and are driving the most impact for us? How do we find more people like that? And then what are some of the things that we want to test here? Like, do we need to change the copy that we're using here? Do we need to change the image? Do we need to change where we're sending the traffic that we're getting from these repos? So all of those things were part of our iterative process to really try to get as much value out of out of the sponsorships that we were running here as possible. And we also like reshaped our process significantly to remove a lot of the manual part. So a lot of this was like fairly manual. Like we like even looking for the email that some of these maintainers use is like really difficult. So we spend a lot of time just like building up like our database of like who are the folks that we want to reach out to, what is the best way to reach out so that it doesn't take us like a couple of hours before we are able to confirm one of these placements. So all of those were parts of the process, but we actually saw like insane results. So like we went from like maybe a handful of signups a month. And again, when I first created this slide deck last year, that was the general trend line. And if I include data from this year, we're already past like the limits of what this chart would be able to like hold. So like we've been able to scale this even beyond what we originally expected that this channel would have. So I bring this up as an example that sometimes there are platforms that don't seem like would be like a potential distribution channel, but they can be if you're able to like find the right people and like figure out like what's like the right type of partnership that makes sense for everyone. The interesting thing with like GitHub repo sponsorships is that a lot of these projects are maintained by individuals that just do this on their own time, right? So they don't get any financial compensation to be able to maintain. It's like some of these tools are used sometimes by hundreds of thousands of people for free across the world. So for them, it's also important to be able to get some sponsorship to be able to continue to dedicate the time to some of these projects. So it ends up being like, at least for us, like a fairly like win-win situation. And that's ultimately like the way that we approach a lot of our like acquisition channels in general, right? Like how do we actually make a process that is going to be viable for both sides of the equation so that we can actually keep this going over time. So other learnings that we got from kind of like running through this, right? Like we started small and like very hyper-focused. So like at first we only really reached out to the GitHub maintainers that were the closest in alignment to the problem that we were trying to solve as a company. But once we actually got some initial traction, like we actually expanded like outside of those initial like guardrails that we had. And then we tested everything, right? So like creative, landing page, how are we showing up, and then where are we sending people after that? And then we had to completely overhaul the process that we were using to actually get some of these out the door, because it was very manual and like a lot of friction in the process. So some things we were able to like completely change and improve the process over time, and some things are still like somewhat time consuming, right? Like we always still think that it's worth like hopping on a call with some of these maintainers just to create a relationship beyond just like figuring out what the sponsorship is going to be. So for us, like the relationship building was really important, but there are other aspects of the process that we were able to like significantly improve over time and take a lot less time today to get a new sponsorship like this up and running. And then the next channel that I want to talk about is YouTube sponsorships, which again, at this point, I think like we all have heard of like influencers, right? So it's not necessarily a new channel that no one has heard of, but at the time that we started doing this, like not many developer-focused companies were actually working with influencers on as like an acquisition channel in general. But there's a couple of things that made this like very obvious to us to at least test out. One is that like the product was highly visual. So I think it like in the fact that we're an agentic development environment, like just gives us a lot of interesting things that people can do with the product. So that kind of like naturally lent itself for it to be like almost like a video first platform that we could use. And then the other piece here was that there wasn't a lot of competition. So at least like when we first started reaching out to a lot of these developer advocates or like influencers in the space, they didn't have a lot of folks that were reaching out to them at the time. So it was very easy for us to like kind of build relationships, try to figure out what's like a good model that was going to work with some of them. So those were some of the reasons why we at least decided to test this out as like a potential channel. And then obviously once we got some of the results, then we have really significantly increased over time what we're doing here as well. So I'm just going to move here. So do we think that they were worth it? All the peaks that I kind of highlighted here were moments in time where we actually had like YouTube sponsorships that were running, and then this is the percentage of our like acquisition for that particular period of time. So like it went from YouTube being about 10 to 12% of all like signups to about anywhere between like 20 to 40% for the periods where we actually had like GitHub sponsorship. So it was a significant percentage of like new like user acquisition. So for us, it was definitely like worth it. And then on the YouTube side, there's a lot of learnings that I actually think are very similar to what we got from testing like the GitHub repo sponsorships as well. So the first thing is that the very first version that you create of some of these channels is not going to be what you end up doing over time. So I want to kind of really stress it out. It might feel very stressful and manual at first, and that is part of it, right? Like you're testing something that new, so like there's already friction built into that process. But once you like actually get a few of these things out the door, you start to build like a repeatable system around it, and makes a lot of the process easier. So that's why I really focus on that like first slide that I shared with framework. Is like the first thing you want to answer is, can I even get the types of users or revenue or whatever metric you're trying to optimize for from this particular thing? And then once you answer that question, then you can move on to efficiency and some of the other pieces that you can do to make the process better. But I do think that it starts with that. Like, can you actually first show that there's traction? And then once you find that you're getting the right results, then you can actually focus on getting more efficient with that. But on the YouTube side, finding the right creators is everything. So like we spend a lot of time working with a lot of different creators across like many disciplines to like really understand what's actually going to work. And our experience has been that dedicated videos tend to work a lot better than ads within the content that those creators are doing. There's definitely exceptions, and there's some creators that have like significant traffic, like folks that have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, where a ad format would actually make more sense because of the much bigger audience that they have. But really, quality is ultimately what matters the most. So I do recommend that folks stay very close working with the creators, at least in the first few pieces of content that they're going to publish, so that you can have a say and make sure that your product is represented in the way that you expect, right? Like what should the title be? Like how should it show up on the thumbnail? Like what does the script look like? All of those are things that I think that, at least especially as you're getting started with this channel, that it makes sense for you to be like pretty involved. Like once you've built some relationships with influencers and they're more aware of the way that your brand is represented and how you kind of like the tone and voice that you want to use, then that becomes a lot easier over time. There's some creators that we don't really have a lot of back and forth with because we stand behind the type of content that they're going to create anyway. But at least to start, I think that that's really important. And then there's always room for negotiation. So even if a creator has like a specific fee that they're working off of, like I think there's always room for negotiation, especially if you're planning on working with folks over a significant period of time. So like I definitely recommend like kind of really sitting down and understanding like what your budget is, and then using that as like a baseline for what is the right like type of creator that we want to go after based on how much we can spend per video. But you can find creators where the cost is going to be anywhere from like $1,500 to like $5,000 for a dedicated video. So like it doesn't have to break the bank either. There's a lot of creators that you can work with that are more reasonable in terms of cost. There are some that cost. We've worked with creators that cost over $20,000, $30,000 per video. So definitely runs across the board. And then we've actually found a lot of success with international YouTube creators as well. So folks that create content in English but are based outside of the US and like have still a significant presence with US audiences, like that has been like a really interesting like niche that we've been able to just like work with a lot of creators that fit that category that have done really well. And I think this may be my last slide. Yeah, we can switch to questions.
Excellent job. All right. Hey, Daniel, I think some of this might be relevant with some of the things you're doing, and Sebastian, You are an absolute marketing wizard, one of the first marketers that just really gave me a new perspective. And we can always talk about the what is it, was it the sriracha conversation? But for this, anything to add? Anything to that you may wonder? Oh, how's your camera doing, Daniel?
Yeah, Ed, this was very insightful. I'm just wondering about some tips to get started on leveraging videos, because that's something that I know I need to do, but I'm sort of slow to move.
Yeah, I do think that we are turning into, in some ways, almost like a video first like world. Like, it is wild to me how much more I'm seeing people spend on not just like advertising on videos, but actually creating content on videos. Like, and even for like, again, like more technical audiences, which I think we're usually left behind on some of this type of content being created for them. But a lot of the companies that I work with today are investing heavily on video content, both like in-house, so like content that they're producing themselves, or they're working with like a, let's say, like a video editor that can help them create some like kind of high quality content, and then also content that they're sponsoring, whether that is with like some of these influencers, and other content creators that just like really lean heavy on the video side. Like, I think that it is the easiest way to get started is to create your own content. And like, I think that you can sometimes even engage some of these creators to help you figure out like what's like the right video content strategy to use. Like, if you find a creator that already has like the ear of your audience, like I think that there's a world where you can engage with them almost on like a consulting basis, beyond just like creating content for you, but like helping you potentially strategize like what's like the right approach for the content that's going to make sense for your audience. If you're not familiar with what's going to move the needle there, I always say like the creators know very closely what their audiences want. So like having a conversation with them and figuring out what are some of the areas to focus on there, like, could be really impactful there.
Mr. Sebastian.
Well, I guess I mean, we're all thinking about new channels. And I guess my thought has come sort of full circle even to some older channels, in the sense and reimagining them. And the thing about an event like this, you mentioned video, and in your first, or my first reaction might be, oh, because it's a richer media form. But I think it's also people, mostly. I mean, you can do videos, of course, animation, but I think compelling videos have people. You mentioned influencers. Again, you might think, oh, that's because they're so smart, but they're people, and people have relationships. And an older one that I was thinking of is surveys, benchmarking, because that's a piece of content, or a kind of content, that can't be generated by AI. Like, it just can't, right? You're asking for people's opinions, right? And so it's going to have, I think all of this is going to have, one, it's going to be at a pace that people can absorb and react to. And I think it has an implied authenticity. Of course, AI with deep fakes and all that, I mean, just put that aside, what's possible. The emotional response. So I just wonder, like, if you think about how to evaluate, either it's a new practice, you mentioned that, your process to follow up to remove efficiency, but because it's slower, it's better in some ways. I think more authentic. So I don't know. That's just sort of my thinking. And does that? Can you reconcile that with your opinions and in your experience? Because again, I would agree you have way more broader experience at this than I do. Mine is more anecdotal and personal.
But yeah, I do agree with definitely like some parts of what you're saying, like especially the kind of like revisiting old channels, I think is really important. And in some ways, that's part of what we did here, right? Like it's not like GitHub was new, right? Like GitHub repos have been around for a long time, but we knew it was like interesting space that has significant traffic. Like we can see like some of the repos that we work with have like over 100,000 GitHub stars, right? So like we already know that there's tens of thousands of developers going there every month. Like why wouldn't we treat it in some ways as a website that has space that can be used as like advertising as well? So that was definitely like kind of like at least our thinking was, how do we reimagine this place or like this surface that we know a lot of developers engage with, but today there's no other avenue beyond engaging with the content that's on that repo, right? So like I think that there's definitely a world where revisiting some of those old tactics and like kind of figuring out what is like the new way that we approach this in today's world, for example, I think like makes a lot of sense. And like surveys are interesting because I think that I've seen them work really well because that you end up generating like data points that you can't find anywhere else, right? And then everyone has like an invested interest in potentially getting access to that information. So like you have like that ability to be able to create almost like a viral moment from that, right? Like if it's something that's like interesting enough that people really want to engage with, then I think that you can definitely like leverage that. And it's funny that you bring that up because it is kind of a project that I'm working on right now. It's kind of like a survey, but it's really like a series of questions that people can answer that gives them context on like, hey, like these are probably the AI tools that you need to go take a look at and see if they're going to support like your workflow, right? So like in one of the things that I see today is that there's like so many different tools that like people have a hard time to even know which one to try first, right? Like, oh, should I use Claude Code or should I use Warp or should I use like Codex or Windsurf, whatever, right? There's like 10 different ones that you could potentially be using that have some functionality that overlaps. How do you know which one is the right one for you and your particular like development workflow, for example? I think that there's a lot I think that we can do today and like creating content like that's like engaging, it's interesting, it's topical today, and it gives people some insight into like, hey, like instead of having to try 10, like here, I'm going to give you the top 3 that I think that you probably should use based on the needs that you have.
Fantastic. All right. So again, strict adherence to timelines. We're now at the 1 minute till. So while the conversation for sure can continue, I do want to say anyone that's on, we can end the stream on LinkedIn Live, but if there's desire to continue on the Meet. Otherwise, good to see everybody. Looking forward to the add-on next week when Founders Institute and A-Round come together for our first joint event. So please join us for that. Ed's information should be inside of the LinkedIn event. Everybody at A-Round, you should have access to everyone else. And I'm looking forward to being in touch with